If someone had told me that a gorgeous billionaire would save me from her own brother, and then protect and love me without condition, I would have kissed them for luck. The boardroom was her kingdom, and the 20-foot mahogany table her throne room. At its head, Sloan sat, a vision of calculated perfection. Her hair, the color of winter platinum, was swept into a severe knot that not a single strand dared escape. Her suit, a tailored masterpiece of obsidian wool, was as sharp and unforgiving as her gaze. The air in the room was thin, chilled by the central air conditioning and the glacial temperature of her presence. And so Q3 projections indicate a potential variance of -2% in the European sector. A senior vice president concluded, his voice trailing off into a nervous silence. A bead of sweat traced a path down his temple. All eyes shifted to Sloan. She didn't move, didn't blink. She simply let the silence stretch, a tortuous instrument she wielded with mastery. The only sound was the soft tap-tap-tap of her impeccably manicured fingernail on the polished wood. A variance, she finally said, her voice a low silken whip. That made everyone flinch. An interesting word for failure. Tell me, Richard, did this variance sneak up on you? Or did you hold the door open for it and offer it a seat at your strategy meeting? Richard visibly palled. Ms. Voss, the market conditions are the same market conditions I tasked you with predicting and overcoming 8 months ago. She interrupted, her voice never rising above a conversational tone. Yet, it carried the force of a gale. I do not pay for excuses. I pay for results. Your entire team will have a revised actionable strategy with 0 variant on my desk by 7 a.m. tomorrow. Not a minute later. Is that understood? A chorus of murmured. Yes. Ms. Voss echoed around the table. Good. Meeting adjourned. As if released from a spell, her executives practically fled the room, their relief palpable. Sloan remained seated, scrolling through her tablet, the glow of the screen reflecting in her cool gray eyes. To the world, Sloan Voss was a titan. At 34, she had inherited a floundering family enterprise and forged it into Ethereum Industries, a global tech conglomerate that was both revered and feared. She was ruthless, brilliant, and untouchable. Her employees called her the Ice Queen behind her back, a title she'd earned and cherished. Emotion was a variable she had long since eliminated from her business calculus. Her fortress of control had one glaring, maddening weakness. Her brother, Cade. Her phone buzzed on the table, a personal line known only to a handful. The caller ID flashed. Cade. A flicker of irritation, quickly suppressed, crossed her features. She answered. What, sis? Hey, listen. I need a tiny favor. A little liquidity issue. His voice was a slimy, cheerful draw, dripping with false charm. She could almost smell the cheap cologne and desperation through the phone. My office hours are for business, Cade, not for funding your degeneracy. Her voice was colder than it had been with her failing VP. Degeneracy? That's harsh. It's just a bit of bad luck. The horses, you know, they have minds of their own. Look, it's just 50 grand. A drop in the bucket for you. I'll pay you back double next week. I've got a sure thing. The answer was no yesterday. It is no today. It will be no tomorrow. Do not call this number again for this. She ended the call without another word, placing the phone down with a quiet final precision. He was the splinter in her thumb, the constant, nagging shame that no amount of power could erase. While she built empires, Cade burned down everything he touched. Handsome in a dissolute Halloween way, he coasted on the fading fumes of the Thorn name, a professional leech whose only talent was finding new depths to sink to gambling, drinking, shady deals with shadier people. He was a masterpiece of self-destructs, and he took gleeful pride in dragging the family name through the mud with him. Her assistant, Miles, a man whose efficiency was matched only by his discretion, entered the room. Your car is ready, Ms. Voss, and a call from your mother. Sloane's perfectly composed mask slipped for an second. A call from her mother in the middle of the day was unusual. A cold dread entirely separate from the annoyance Cade inspired began to coil in her stomach. She took the call. "Mother, is everything all right?" Her mother's voice was thin, wobbly, choked with tears. "Sloan? Oh, darling. I didn't know who else to call. We have to be out by the end of the week." The cold dread turned to ice. "Out? Out of where? What are you talking about?" "The house. The new owners came by. They were very kind, but they said the sale was final and they'd like to start renovations." Sloane's world tilted. The house, the graceful ivy-covered colonial in Brookside, where she and Cade had grown up, where her parents had lived for 40 years, filled with memories with her mother's garden, her father's library, the one piece of their legacy Cade hadn't yet managed to tarnish. "What new owners?" Sloane's voice was dangerously quiet. "Mother, what sale?" "Cade. He said he was helping us with some financial planning. He had us sign some papers. He said it was just a formality for a refinance to help him get back on his feet." The pieces slammed together with the force of a physical blow. The liquidity issues, the sure thing, the brazen arrogance. He hadn't just stolen from them. He had sold the very roof from over their heads. He had looked into their trusting eyes and lied to fund his next bet. A white-hot rage, purer and more violent than any she had ever felt in the boardroom, erupted within her. It was a primal thing, a protective fury that shattered her icy control. "Stay where you are," she commanded, her voice trembling with the effort of containment. "Do not touch anything. Do not speak to anyone. I am handling this." She ended the call. The elegant tablet in her hand became a projectile hurled across the room, where it shattered against the wall in a burst of glass and plastic. A guttural scream of pure, unadulterated fury tore from her throat, echoing in the empty, opulent room. Miles stood frozen by the door, a statue of perfect professionalism, but his eyes were wide. Sloan paced, a caged panther, her breath coming in sharp gusts. The image of her parents, gentle, aging, bewildered, facing homelessness, fueled the inferno. And Cade was probably at a track or a casino right now, burning their childhood home on a roulette wheel. She stopped her back to Miles. The rage didn't recede. It crystallized into something hard, sharp, and deadly purposeful. When she turned around, her expression was not one of anger, but of terrifying, absolute resolve. The Ice Queen was back, but now her ice was forged in the fires of vengeance. "Miles," she said, her voice once again a flat, controlled blade. "To tasks immediately." "Yes, Ms. Voss. First, relocate my parents. The penthouse at the Skyview Towers is vacant. Have it furnished, stocked, and secured by tonight. Move them discreetly. They are to want for nothing. No one is to know their location, of course. Second," she continued, her gray eyes glinting with a frigid light, "find my brother. I want him tailed. I want every move he makes documented. Every person he speaks to, every debt he incurs, every CD bar and gambling den he crawls into. I want a ledger of his sins. I want to know what he eats for breakfast." She walked to the window, looking down at the city sprawling beneath her. "A kingdom," she commanded. "He believes there are no consequences for his actions. He believes our name is a shield for his filth." She turned and the look on her face made even unflappable Miles take an involuntary step back. It was the calm before the annihilation. "It is time," Sloan Voss vowed, her whisper etching frost on the glass to teach him how very wrong he is. The days following her parents' relocation were a masterclass in cold, efficient fury. Sloan operated like a precision machine, her every action calibrated to two objectives: securing her parents' new reality and dismantling her brother's. The Skyview penthouse shifted from a sterile luxury showcase into a welcoming, fortified home. Within 48 hours, her parents, stunned and grieving, were settled with a discreet security team and a live-in aide who, unknown to them, was a former MI6 operative. Sloan had wiped them from Cade's radar, but erasing Cade himself wasn't the objective. Ruin was. She buried herself in work with a fearsome intensity. The shattered tablet incident was already cleaned up and filed away. The boardroom felt more like a command center, and her executives, still shaken from their last session, skirted around her as if she were a primed explosive. Her fury was a living force, a silent arctic aura that moved ahead of her through Ethereum's halls. She was waiting for the ammunition she needed to wage her war. On the third morning, a soft knock sounded in her soundproof office. "Enter." Miles stepped in, carrying a slim black dossier. His face wore its usual mask of professional calm. But Sloan, who could read the faintest tremor in a market chart, caught the tension at his eyes. He'd seen something that disturbed him. "Your report, Ms. Voss," he said, setting the folder on her desk. She didn't open it at once. She steepled her fingers, eyes on him. "Summarize." Miles drew a measured breath. "His patterns are stable. He wakes around noon, usually in a different low-rent apartment, likely crashing with associates. His afternoons are spent at off-track betting parlors or illegal poker rooms in the warehouse district. Evenings go to heavy drinking, moving from one dive to the next. He's accruing debt at an astonishing pace. He owes serious sums to men not known for patience." Sloane's lip curled. It was the pathetic, predictable slide she'd anticipated. "And his funding, who keeps feeding him?" "He's been selling personal effects, a watch, a signet ring that belonged to your father, and using proceeds from the property sale," Miles said, voice carefully neutral on that last point. A cold satisfaction settled in her gut. Every bet, every drink, every stolen heirloom was another brick in the cell she was building for him. "Good, let him dig deeper." "Is that all?" Miles hesitated. The pause was tiny, but to Sloan it blared like a siren. There's another recurring stop in his routine. Not gambling and not drinking. Sloane's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "For the last 2 weeks. Almost daily, late afternoons at a small independent café, the Daily Grind in the North End. He stays for hours. He isn't there to work or read. He's there to harass the owner." The word harass struck the quiet room like a stone. Sloane's blood, already cold, seemed to freeze solid. "Harass." Our operative watched from a distance and closed in on several occasions to catch fragments. He corners her in long, unwanted conversation. He comments on her looks. He turns belligerent and insulting when she's busy or tries to disengage. He's waited outside at closing 3 times, offering rides despite repeated refusals. Sloan leaned forward, very slowly. The calm she'd projected thinned, replaced by a predatory stillness. "The owner. Who is she?" "Willow Hart, 28. She's owned the shop a little over 2 years. Financials look strained. And my brother's angle with Willow Hart." Miles's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Last night, he was at a bar called the Rusty Nail. He was drunk. Bragging," he said. Miles paused, clearly hating the vulgarity he was about to quote. The little coffee _ was playing hard to get, but she was falling for him. He framed her refusals as a game and said he'd wear her down. He made a crude bet on how soon he'd win. The office air went glacial. Sloane's knuckles blanched where she gripped the desk edge. The image flashed. Her feckless, repellent brother, a parasite, who had just devoured his parents' home, now setting his sights on an innocent woman, trying to run her business. He saw her not as a person but a conquest, a prize in his squalid little world. The operatives read. Sloane's voice was a whisper, more dangerous for its softness, based on posture and interaction. "He believes Ms. Hart is not playing coy. She's genuinely afraid. She avoids direct pushback, likely to prevent escalation. She's polite to the point of self-erasure to diffuse him. Classic persistent, unwanted pursuit." Sloan rose and walked to the floor-to-ceiling glass. Turning her back to Miles and the folder, she watched the city in motion below, a realm of order and power she controlled. And in a small café up north, a world outside her reach, her brother was using the last scraps of their family's dignity to terrorize a stranger. The fury remained a burning core of it fixed on Cade, but something new unfurled beside it, a fierce, startlingly primal need to protect. Willow Hart had done nothing. She was simply a vulnerable target who'd crossed paths with a tornado of selfishness, collateral in Cade's war on his own life and, by extension, a victim of the family's disgrace. Sloan Voss did not allow collateral damage. She turned from the window, decision set. Her gray eyes were chips of flint. "Schedule a car," she said, tone brooking no debate. "Clear my afternoon." "No. Cancel the rest of the day." Miles blinked. "The meeting with the Singapore investors?" "Cancel." She lifted the black dossier, fingers tight on the proof of her brother's vileness. "This is no longer a familiar matter to handle quietly. It's an external threat, and I deal with threats myself." The drive north was a silent, furious pilgrimage. Sloan sat in the hushed luxury of her black sedan, the dossier on her lap feeling less like paper and more like toxic waste. Each page was a testament to her brother's degradation, but the photos of Willow Hart caught unaware through a long lens held her gaze. A woman with warm, intelligent eyes and a smile that stayed kind even when strained by Cade's presence. A woman being worn down. The daily grind was exactly as described. A small independent shop tucked between a vintage bookstore and a faded record store. It looked like a place that survived on regulars and foot traffic, not the cold corporate efficiency of the chain near her office. Through the window she saw exposed brick, mismatched armchairs, shelves of well-thumbed books. It was charming, a foreign word in her mind. It was also painfully vulnerable. She told the driver to circle. She would go alone. The door opened on a soft bell chime. At once, the air turned rich with fresh coffee, vanilla, and something sweet, baking a stark contrast to the sterile, recycled air of her tower. The space was warm, inviting, and empty save for one person. Willow Hart stood behind the counter, back turned as she wiped down an espresso machine, humming to a folk song from a small speaker. Sloan had a moment to see her unguarded. The photos hadn't done her justice. Softer in person, a cascade of chestnut hair tied in a loose, slightly messy bun, tendrils curling against the nape of her neck, a simple cream sweater hugging her frame and faded jeans. She moved with an easy, practical grace. Then Willow turned and the world tipped. Sloan was used to reactions. The sharp inhale, the widened eyes, the automatic straightening of spines. She was Sloan Voss. Her presence was an event. But Willow's reaction was different, not just recognition or intimidation. It was unfiltered, starstruck wonder, as if a myth had wandered into her modest shop. Warm, honey-brown eyes went wide. Lips parted slightly. The cloth slipped from her fingers. A pretty blush climbed her neck and bloomed across her cheeks. She was, simply, breathtakingly flustered. "Oh, hello. Welcome to the daily grind," she managed, voice melodic, a little shaken. She wiped her hands on her apron. "What can I get you?" Sloan approached, heels soft on worn wood. She didn't smile. She set the black dossier on the counter between them, a slash of corporate menace in a cozy room. "You can start by telling me about the man harassing you," Sloan said, voice cool and level, free of pleasantry. "The one who thinks you're falling for him." Color drained from Willow's face as fast as it had risen. The open warmth shuddered, replaced by a mask of weary fear and deep embarrassment. Her gaze flicked to the door as if expecting Cade to appear. She folded her arms, a protective curl that made her look heartbreakingly young. I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered, the lie thin and fragile. "I think you do," Sloan replied, not unkind, but immovably firm. She tapped the dossier. His name is Cade Voss. He's my brother, and I'm here because I know exactly how much discomfort he's been causing you. Confusion flickered in Willow's eyes. She looked from the stunning, impeccably dressed stranger to the folder that mirrored her recent nightmare. The connection refused to compute. Your brother. The words barely formed. The Vosses were local royalty, their name on half the financial district. This woman, with ice blonde hair and a commanding aura, could only be the CEO. The idea that her tormentor wasn't some random creep but tied to this was staggering. Sloan gave a single, sharp nod. Unfortunately, and his behavior is unacceptable. I need you to confirm details. He comes daily. He monopolizes your time. He makes inappropriate comments. He waits after closing. Accurate. The plain, non-judgmental inventory cracked the last of Willow's defenses. The brave front she'd worn for weeks crumpled. Her shoulders sagged. She stared down, voice thick with unshed tears. Yes, she admitted, like a confession. It's all true. He won't listen. I've tried being kind. I've tried being firm. I've told him I'm not interested, that I'm busy, that he's making me uncomfortable. He laughs it off. He tells his friends that I'm, she swallowed, shame coloring the words, playing a game. I'm scared to make him angrier. I can't afford to lose the few customers I have if he makes a scene. I don't know what to do. The raw helplessness struck a chord deep in Sloan, a vault she kept locked. This wasn't about family honor anymore. It was about justice. What you do, Sloan said, her voice softening a fraction, is let me handle it. Willow looked up, hope and doubt warring in her glistening eyes. How restraining order? The police said since he hasn't technically threatened me, the police are limited. I am not. Sloan's gaze stayed steady. I have a proposal. A way to shatter his delusion so completely he'll never look your way again. Willow blinked. A proposal. We give him exactly what he thinks he sees, Sloan said, as if it were obvious. We date publicly. The silence that followed was complete, broken only by the gentle folk song from the speaker. Willow stared as if Sloan had suggested they fly to the moon. I'm sorry. You want us to what? A disbelieving, slightly hysterical laugh escaped. Date you and me to make your brother jealous. That's insane, is it? Sloan arched a perfectly sculpted brow. His entire fantasy rests on winning you. Seeing you with anyone wounds his ego. Seeing you with me, his famously unreachable, successful sister, would annihilate it. It would be the most profound humiliation possible. He won't show his face here again. Willow shook her head, trying to process. Ms. Voss, I'm, what, a café owner? You're, well, you. No one would believe it. They'll believe what I show them, Sloan said, utterly certain. And to make it worth your while to compensate for the theater. Her eyes swept the quiet, struggling shop. My entire headquarters will switch coffee catering exclusively to the daily grind. Every meeting, every break room, every executive lunch, I'll guarantee you steady, significant business. The offer didn't land like a proposal. It landed like a lifeline. Willow's financial urgency was an open secret. Sloan had seen the numbers. She knew exactly how precarious it was. This wasn't just revenge. It was rescue. Willow's mouth opened, then closed. She looked around at her sanctuary, her struggling dream. She pictured Cade's leering face, the way his presence sucked the joy from the place she loved. Then she looked back at Sloan, this stunning, formidable, inexplicable woman offering a shield and a future on a platter. Another laugh bubbled out, different this time. A release of tension, a surrender to the unbelievable. You're completely serious, Willow said. A real smile, the first Sloan had seen, finally touched her lips, crinkling her eyes. Warm, radiant. I am never not serious, Sloan replied, a flicker of amusement in her gaze. Willow shook her head, odd, tucking a stray lock behind her ear. Okay. This is officially the strangest day of my life. She drew a deep breath. Decision made. But yes, it's a deal. Fake dating and corporate salvation. Why not? Sloan gave a slow, approving nod. Good. She lifted the toxic dossier from the counter. My assistant will send over contracts. And the first week's order in the morning. She turned to go. The transaction complete. Wait, Willow's call stopped her. Sloan glanced back. Willow bit her lip. Blush rising again. Should we practice? What's our story? How did we meet? Sloan allowed a small, knowing smirk, terrifying and beautiful. Keep it simple. Say I have a taste for the finer things. She pushed open the door. The bells chimed her exit, leaving Willow alone in her coffee-scented shop, her world newly and very strangely cracked open. The transformation of the daily grind began at precisely 7:45 the next morning. Running on the nervous energy of opening day, Willow pulled a tray of almond croissants from the oven. When the first wave hit, not a trickle, a flood, a sleek black company shuttle eased to the curb and spilled a stream of men and women in immaculate business wear. They moved with a purpose the sleepy North End didn't often see. Spines straight, voices a low professional hum. They filled the small room, not with noise but a palpable aura of importance. The lead woman, her badge read Anna, executive admin, floor 42, stepped to the counter with a tablet. Ms. Hartmiles from Ms. Voss's office sent us. We've got the first corporate order. Willow, flour dust on her apron, blinked. Right? Of course. What can I get you? Anna smiled, a crisp professional curve. 37 lattes, 12. Non-dairy, 20 Americanos, 15 cappuccinos, and an assortment of pastries for senior staff. She nodded toward the croissants cooling on the rack. Those will be perfect. Those will do perfectly. Willow's brain did a frantic, joyful calculation. This single order was larger than her entire morning rush on a good day. For a terrifying second, she thought she might faint. Then professional instinct kicked in. Right? Okay. Give me 10 minutes to get the espresso machine fired up to full capacity. She expected grumbles, impatience, the subtle disdain of corporate clients forced to slum it in a tiny shop. Instead, something remarkable happened. The Ethereum employees, freed from their queue, began to explore. A young man in a bespoke suit marveled at her collection of vintage coffee brewing equipment, displayed on a shelf. A woman in a severe pencil skirt cooped over the shop cat, Moki, who was basking in a sunbeam. They took photos of the rustic, chalkboard menu, complimented the aroma, and chatted easily amongst themselves. They were, to her astonishment, charming, and they all, without fail, made a point to speak to her directly. Ms. Voss has been raving about this place, one of them said, picking up his latte, said, it's the only place in the city that understands the nuance of a light roast. This cinnamon bun is incredible. Another woman exclaimed, genuinely delighted. You must give me the recipe. Seriously. Willow, flushed and bustling behind the counter, felt a profound and unexpected sense of validation. This wasn't just business. It was an endorsement from a world she'd never had access to. Her world, her little dream, was suddenly, dazzlingly opening up. By 10 a.m., the morning rush had subsided, leaving Willow with a towering stack of dirty cups, a depleted pastry case, and a cash register that chimed a happy, prosperous song she hadn't heard in years. She was wiping down the counter, a euphoric smile on her face when the door chimed again. Sloan Voss stood in the doorway. Today, she was slightly less the corporate titan and more approachably formidable. She wore dark tailored slacks, a simple but exquisitely cut black cashmere sweater, and her blonde hair was down, falling in a sleek wave over one shoulder. She held a leather portfolio under her arm. Her gaze swept the room, taking in the lingering Ethereum employees, who suddenly straightened up as if the CEO herself had walked into their cubicle. Ms. Voss, we were just heading back, one of them stammered. Sloan gave a curt, dismissive nod. The shuttle is waiting. They practically fled. Willow's heart did a funny little flip. The woman was even more stunning in the soft, natural light of the café. "Come to check on your investment?" Willow asked, her voice teasing, surprising herself with her own boldness. Sloane's lips quirked. "I was in the neighborhood, and appearances must be maintained." She glided to the counter, her eyes scanning Willow's face. "The report from my staff was effusive." "They were lovely," Willow said, genuinely meaning it, "and they tipped heavily. I think your VP of Finance left $20 for a black coffee. James has more money than sense," Sloan said dryly, but there was a glint of amusement in her gray eyes. She didn't make a move to leave. Instead, she gestured to a small two-person table in the corner. "I have some reading to do. I'll take an espresso and one of those." She pointed to the last remaining Arandas. Willow's eyebrows shot up. "You're staying. Is that a problem?" Sloan asked, her tone even. No, of course not. It's just you don't seem like the reading in a coffee shop type." "I'm full of surprises," Sloan said. And for the first time, Willow saw a real full-fledged smirk. It was devastating. She turned and settled herself at the table, pulling out her reading glasses and documents from her portfolio, looking every bit like a Vogue photo shoot titled CEO at Leisure. Willow brought over the espresso and croissant on a small ceramic plate. "On the house for the corporate salvation." Sloan looked up over the rim of her glasses. "I don't accept camped items. It creates a conflict of interest." She placed a crisp $50 bill on the table. "Keep the change." Willow opened her mouth to argue, saw the immovable look in Sloane's eyes, and decided to pick her battles. She pocketed the bill with a shake of her head. "You are the most infuriatingly principled person I've ever met. You say that like it's a bad thing." And so it began. The next day, Sloan returned, and the day after that, she would arrive mid-morning after the corporate rush and commandeer the same corner table. She claimed it was a necessary part of the ruse, to be seen, to establish a pattern. But Willow began to notice things. She noticed that Sloane's reading often consisted of her staring out the window, lost in thought, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. She noticed that the icy CEO's posture would gradually soften the longer she sat in the warm, quiet shop. She noticed that the woman who commanded boardrooms with a whisper had a habit of chewing on the end of her pen when deep in thought, a strangely human, endearing tick. And she talked, not a lot, but more than Willow ever expected. Their interaction started as simple transactional exchanges. "Willow, more espresso." "Sloan, please." "Willow, that report looks boring." "Sloan, the author should be fired for crimes against prose." But slowly, the barbs became wittier, the exchanges longer, tinged with a flirtatious curiosity. One afternoon, Willow was attempting to descale the espresso machine, muttering curses under her breath. "Having trouble with your equipment, Ms. Hart?" Sloan asked without looking up from her papers. "It's a temperamental beast," Willow grumbled. "Unlike some, it doesn't respond to intimidation." Sloan finally glanced over, her gaze traveling slowly from the machine to Willow. "Perhaps you're not being firm enough. Have you tried threatening its job security?" Willow laughed, a real unfettered sound. "I'll add it to the list. Right after bribery with coffee beans. A multifaceted approach." Sloan nodded sagely. "I approve." Another day. A customer was being particularly difficult, complaining about the foam on his latte. Willow, ever the professional, was patiently offering to remake it. Sloan watched the entire exchange, her expression growing colder by the second. As the man finally left with his remade drink, grumbling, Sloan caught Willow's eye. "You're too polite," she stated. "It's called customer service." Willow sighed, wiping the counter. "It's called tolerating mediocrity," Sloan corrected. "His tie was hideous, and his opinions are invalid. Next time, tell him to take his business elsewhere." Willow gaped at her. "I can't do that." "Why not?" I just made you financially independent. You can afford to fire the customers." Sloan said it with such utter unshakable conviction that Willow couldn't help but laugh again. The line between their fake arrangement and a genuine budding connection began to blur. Sloan's visits stopped feeling like corporate espionage and started feeling like visits. Willow found herself looking forward to the chime of the door around 10:30 a.m., her pulse quickening at the sight of that sleek blonde hair and imposing silhouette. She discovered that beneath the Ice Queen persona was a woman of sharp wit, dry humor, and a surprising, almost protective sense of justice. And Sloan, for her part, found the hours she spent in the sun-dappled café to be the most peaceful of her day. The constant pressure in her chest, the weight of her empire, and her family disgrace seemed to loosen its grip. She enjoyed the easy rhythm of the place, the smell of sugar and coffee, and most of all, she enjoyed the woman who ran it. Willow's warmth was not a performance. It was her essence. Her kindness was genuine, her humor self-deprecating and quick. She was the antithesis of everything in Sloan's world. And Sloan, though she would never admit it out loud, was becoming quietly, fiercely obsessed with the contrast. The game was no longer just about fooling Cade. It was about the spark in Willow's eyes when she laughed at one of Sloan's dry remarks. It was about the way Sloan's own carefully constructed walls seemed to have no defense against a simple warm smile offered over a cup of perfectly brewed coffee. The fake relationship had begun, but something very, very real was brewing right alongside it. The fragile, sun-dappled piece of the daily grind shattered at 3:17 p.m. The door didn't chime. It was thrown open with a force that made the glass pane rattle in its frame. Cade Voss stood in the doorway, backlit by the afternoon sun, a blot of seething entitlement against the cozy warmth of the shop. He was disheveled, his expensive shirt wrinkled and untucked, his eyes bloodshot from a midday bender. The scent of cheap whiskey and arrogance preceded him like a foul cloud. Willow, who was showing a young couple the origin notes of a new Ethiopian blend, froze. The color drained from her face, her easy smile vanishing as if it had never been. Her hand holding the bag of coffee beans trembled slightly. "Willow, sweetheart." Cade's voice was a loud, sloppy draw that grated against the quiet folk music still playing. "Miss me. Had to take care of some business, but I couldn't stay away from my good luck charm." The young couple exchanged an uncomfortable glance, sensing the toxic shift in the atmosphere. Willow's posture became rigid, her shoulders hunching slightly in a subconscious effort to make herself smaller. "Cade, I'm with customers." Her voice was thin, strained, the practiced politeness, a thin shield over her fear. "They can wait." He waved a dismissive hand, stumbling slightly as he advanced toward the counter. He completely ignored the other patrons, his entire focus a predatory lock on Willow. "I had a hell of a win today. A real comeback. Thought we could celebrate. I know this great little place downtown." From her corner table, Sloan had gone preacherly still. She had been pretending to read a contract, but her entire awareness had been focused on the easy rhythm of Willow's movements, the soft sound of her humming. The intrusion was a violation. She watched her blood turning to ice as her brother oozed his way across the room. She saw the way Willow's spine stiffened, the way her fingers clenched white on the counter edge. She saw the familiar smug cruelty on Cade's face, the same look he'd had when he convinced their parents to sign away their home. His voice was a drone in her ears, playing hard to get his cute. "But don't you think it's time to drop the act? We both know you've been waiting for me." Willow took a half step back, her eyes darting toward Sloan's corner, a silent, panicked plea. "Cade, please, not now. I'm working. I'm your best customer, baby," he leered, leaning over the counter, invading her space. "Shouldn't you be a little nicer to me?" That was it. The word nice. The expectation that she should be nice to him while he terrorized her. It snapped something inside Sloan. The cold, calculated plan to slowly humiliate him with a fabricated relationship evaporated. It was too slow, to intellectual for the raw, protective fury that ignited in her veins. He wasn't a business problem to be managed. He was a threat to be eliminated. Now Sloan rose. It wasn't a dramatic leap. It was a slow, deliberate uncoiling, like a predator rising from a languid pose. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. The few customers still there fell utterly silent, watching the scene unfold with rapt, horrified fascination. Cade, too absorbed in his target, didn't notice her approach until she was right behind him. "You're interrupting." Sloane's voice cut through the tension, flat and sharp as a guillotine blade. Cade flinched, turning around with a surprised scowl. That quickly morphed into a sneer of recognition. "Sloan, what the hell are you doing here?" Slumming it. His eyes flicked between his sister and Willow, confusion wearing with his drunken arrogance. The connection wasn't computing. Sloan didn't even look at him. Her gaze was fixed on Willow, whose wide, terrified eyes were now filled with a new kind of shock. In that split second, a silent message passed between them. Sloane's eyes held a question, a promise, a wild, impulsive plan. Willow, her heart hammering against her ribs, gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. "Yes, whatever you're about to do. Yes." With a movement so fluid it seemed choreographed, Sloan closed the distance. She didn't push Cade aside. She simply erased him from her reality. Her hand came up, not to strike, but to cup Willow's cheek, her thumb stroking a gentle, reassuring line against her skin. Willow's breath hitched. Then Sloan leaned in. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It wasn't a hesitant peck for show. It was a claiming. Her other arm snaked around Willow's waist, pulling her body flush against her own, bending her slightly over the counter in a move of breathtaking possessiveness. Her lips found Willow's with a hunger and a certainty that stole the air from the room. It was deep, passionate, and utterly devastatingly real. For Willow, the world dissolved. The fear, the anxiety, the coffee shop, Cade, it all melted away in the face of the shocking, overwhelming sensation. Sloane's lips were softer than she could have ever imagined. Yet the kiss was firm, demanding an answer, and Willow gave it. Her hands, which had been frozen at her sides, came up to clutch at Sloane's cashmere sweater, holding on for dear life as a surge of heat, so intense it was dizzying, shot through her entire body. She kissed her back, a soft, yielding, eager response that turned the performance into something profoundly authentic. When Sloan finally broke the kiss, it was with a soft, wet sound that seemed obscenely loud in the silence. She rested her forehead against Willow's for a heartbeat, their breath mingling, both of them slightly dazed. Sloane's gray eyes were dark, pupils blown wide with an emotion that was far from fake. Then, and only then, did she turn her head to look at her brother. Cade's face was a grotesque canvas of emotions. The smugness had been wiped away, replaced first by utter, dumbfounded shock, then by a dawning, humiliated comprehension, which quickly curdled into pure, unadulterated rage. His mouth hung open, his face flushed a mottled purple. He looked like a man who had just been shown incontrovertible proof that his entire world was a lie. What? He sputtered, his voice a strangled croak. You with her." Sloane's smirk was a thing of glacial triumph. She slowly, deliberately wiped her thumb across her bottom lip, her arm still possessively tight around Willow's waist, holding her close. Willow, flushed and breathless, leaned into the support, her body thrumming with adrenaline. "Is there a problem, Cade?" Sloane's voice was silk wrapped around steel. "You seem upset." "I was just kissing my girlfriend." The word girlfriend landed like a bomb. Cade flinched as if he'd been struck. "You're no, this is some twisted joke," he roared, drawing the attention of people passing on the street outside. "You're doing this to get at me. You flatter yourself," Sloan said, her tone dropping from amused to lethally cold. "The world does not revolve around your pathetic delusions. Though, speaking of delusions, she released Willow, but only to take a single menacing step toward her brother. The one where this woman, she gestured to Willow without looking away from Cade, was ever interested in a degenerate sore rat like you was particularly entertaining. While you were bragging to your low-life friends, you were just the annoying fly. She was too polite to twat. Cade's fists clenched. You bitch. I've already been to the police. Sloan interrupted, her voice dropping to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than a shout. I've given them a detailed file of your activities. Your harassment of Ms. Hart features prominently. You will stay away from her. You will stay away from this shop. You will stay away from our parents. If you so much as look in any of their directions again, I will not merely ruin your social life, Cade. I will have you buried in litigation so deep you will forget what sunlight looks like. Now get out of her place of business. You're contaminating the air. The defeat was absolute. The rage in his eyes gutted out, replaced by a hollow, shocked emptiness. He had been publicly dismantled, humiliated, and neutered in the space of 2 minutes. He looked from Sloane's merciless face to Willow's, who was now watching him, not with fear, but with a newfound, steadying strength. He had nothing, no leverage, no lie to hide behind, no power. With a final inarticulate sound of fury and shame, he turned on his heel and stormed out, shoving the door open so hard the chime sounded like a scream. The silence he left behind was heavy and electric. Willow let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding, her legs feeling like jelly. Sloan turned back to her, the icy mask melting away, replaced by a look of sudden uncharacteristic contrition. Willow, she began, her voice losing its commanding edge. I apologize. That was an instinct. I didn't plan to. I shouldn't have been so impulsive. It was a gross overstep of our arrangement. Willow looked at her, really looked at her, at the woman who had just walked through fire for her, who had turned her own body into a weapon to shield her, who had kissed her with a passion that had felt anything but fake. Her shyness returned for a moment, a blush warming her cheeks again, but she met Sloane's gaze steadily. She took a small step forward, closing the distance Sloan had created. Don't apologize, Willow said, her voice soft but clear. She bit her lip, a small, vulnerable smile touching her lips. The truth is, I've been wanting you to do that since the first moment you walked in here. The admission hung in the air between them, brave and honest. Sloane's eyes widened a fraction. Then the familiar knowing smirk returned, but this time it was warmer, laced with a genuine, surprised pleasure. It was the look of a queen who had just been offered a treasure she hadn't even known she was searching for. Is that so? She murmured, her gaze dropping to Willow's lips again. Outside, the world moved on, but inside the daily grind, the line between fiction and reality had not just been blurred. It had been utterly incinerated. The morning after the kiss, the air in Sloane's penthouse was thick with unspoken electricity. They had parted ways the previous evening with a tension that was both terrifying and exhilarating. A live wire strung between them, humming with the promise of what that kiss had unleashed. Over a breakfast of fresh fruit and artisanal bread that neither of them truly tasted, Sloan had laid out the day's plan with the strategic precision of a general going to war. I'm taking you to Ethereum today, she'd stated, her tone leaving no room for debate. Willow, still trying to navigate the new dizzying reality where she had passionately kissed Sloan Voss, almost choked on her orange juice. What? Why? The ruse must be consistent, Sloan replied, though the glint in her eyes suggested the ruse was now a flimsy pretext for something far more compelling. My brother will be licking his wounds, but he has spies everywhere. If we are to be believed, we must be seen everywhere. Now, standing before the soaring mirrored glass monolith of Ethereum Tower, Willow felt a wave of sheer intimidation. This was Sloane's world, a universe of cold, hard angles, impossible wealth, and ruthless ambition. she self-consciously smoothed down her best sweater dress, feeling painfully bohemian and out of place. Sloan in a razor-sharp pantsuit the color of gunmetal seemed to sense her trepidation. As they approached the vast marble-lined lobby, she didn't just lead the way. She subtly shifted her posture. Her hand, which had been holding her portfolio, found the small of Willow's back. It wasn't a dramatic gesture, but it was a claiming one, a steadying, possessive point of contact that sent a jolt straight through Willow's core. The effect on the lobby was instantaneous. Security guards snapped to attention. Receptionists' eyes widened, their smiles frozen in professional surprise. Employees on their way to the elevators did double takes, their conversations dying mid-sentence. The sight of their famously solitary, untouchable CEO with a hand on the back of a soft-looking, unfamiliar woman was more shocking than any corporate takeover announcement. They rode the private elevator to the executive floor in a silence charged with anticipation. Willow watched their reflection in the polished brass doors. Sloan, a statue of impenetrable confidence, and herself, a wide-eyed visitor from another planet. The elevator doors slid open onto a carpeted hush. This was the sanctum sanctorum, where the air itself smelled of expensive perfume, old money, and power. Sloane's assistant, Miles, was at his desk, the picture of unflappable efficiency. Even his eyebrows twitched in microscopic surprise. Ms. Voss, your 10:30 is confirmed. The Singapore documents are on your desk. Thank you, Miles. Clear my schedule. For the next hour. Sloane's voice was calm, but it carried through the silent floor. I'd like you to meet Willow Hart, my girlfriend. The word landed with the force of a detonation. Girlfriend. It was so domestic, so personal, so utterly alien coming from Sloan Voss. Miles, to his immense credit, recovered and unconned, offering Willow a polite, professional nod. A pleasure. Ms. Hart, please call me Willow, she managed, her voice a faint squeak. Sloane's hand was still on her back, guiding her forward. She didn't stop at her office door. Instead, she led Willow on a slow, deliberate procession through the executive bullpen. Every head was down, pretending to work, but Willow could feel the weight of 100 stolen glances. Jessica, Sloan said, stopping at a senior VP's desk. The woman looked up, startled. This is Willow. Willow, Jessica handles our Asia-Pacific mergers. Willow owns the Daily Grind, the coffee shop I was telling you about. You'll be switching all your departments, catering to her effective immediately. Of course. Ms. Voss, Jessica stammered, her eyes darting between her terrifying boss and the woman at her side. They continued the tour. Sloan introduced Willow to a stunned department head, a speechless IT director, a flustered marketing executive. With each introduction, the word girlfriend was woven into the conversation. A bomb Arya dropped with casual precision. The news wasn't just delivered. It was branded into the corporate consciousness. See her. This is her. She is with me, finally. They reached the door to Sloane's office. It was a massive slab of polished ebony. Sloan pushed it open and ushered Willow inside. The office was breathtaking. A glass-walled corner office with a panoramic view of the city's skyline. It was minimalist, austere and intimidatingly perfect. A single monolithic desk of white marble, a single stark piece of modern art on the wall. It was a space designed for one. Sloan closed the door behind them. The sound of the latch clicking into place was deafening in the sudden silence. The corporate performance was over. They were alone. Willow let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Wow. So that was something. I think you might have given your entire company a collective heart attack. Sloan didn't answer. She was watching Willow, her gray eyes dark with an intensity that had nothing to do with corporate strategy. The ice queen facade was gone, melted away by a heat that was entirely personal. They needed to see, Sloan said, her voice lower now, a private thrum that vibrated in Willow's bones. See what? Willow whispered. her heart beginning to hammer against her ribs. That you're real. That this is real. Sloan took a step forward, then another. She backed Willow up against the solid, cool wood of the office door. The city sprawled beneath them, a kingdom at their feet. But Sloane's gaze was locked only on Willow. Sloan? Willow's protest was weak, a token gesture swallowed by the want that was screaming through her. You have unrestricted access to this office, Sloan murmured, her lips inches from Willow's. To me. Do you understand? Her hand came up to cup Willow's jaw, her thumb stroking the line of her cheekbone. It was a shockingly tender gesture from a woman of such brutal efficiency. Then she leaned in and captured Willow's mouth in a searing kiss. It was nothing like the performative kiss in the coffee shop. This was raw, hungry, and unequivocally real. It was acclaiming. Sloane's body pressed Willow firmly against the door, one hand tangling in her brunette hair, the other sliding down her side, coming to rest on her hip. Willow moaned into the kiss, her hands coming up to clutch at the sharp lapels of Sloane's jacket, holding on for dear life as the world tilted. This was no longer part of a game. This was desire, pure and undiluted. Sloane's kisses trailed from her mouth down to her jaw, her neck nipping and sucking at the sensitive skin there. Her roaming hand slipped under the hem of Willow's sweater dress, her cool fingers tracing a path up the outside of Willow's thigh. Sloan, someone could. Willow gasped, even as she arched into the touch. The door is locked, the blinds are tinted, and no one enters. Without my express permission. Sloan breathed against her skin, her voice a husky promise. No one will disturb us. Her fingers dipped higher, finding the lace edge of Willow's underwear. A soft, questioning touch that made Willow's knees buckle. Sloan held her up, her body, strong and sure against Willow's. Tell me you want this, Sloan commanded, her eyes blazing with a fire Willow had never seen before. Tell me you want me. Yes, Willow whimpered, her head falling back against the door with a soft thud. All pretense, all thought of the fake relationship evaporated. There was only this, only Sloan. God, yes, I want you. Sloan's smirk was triumphant, possessive. Her fingers slipped beneath the lace, finding her wet and ready. A low, guttural sound of approval escaped her. Mine, she whispered, the word a vow against Willow's lips as her touch became more insistent, drawing a broken cry from Willow's throat. In Sloane's pristine, ordered office, with a silent, bustling city watching unknowingly through the tinted glass, the line between their public performance and private passion was not just blurred, it was utterly incinerated. The CEO had claimed her girlfriend in front of her entire empire. And now, in the sanctum of her power, she was claiming her for real. The drive to Sloane's estate was a silent, charged journey through the velvet cloak of night. The city lights faded in the rearview mirror, replaced by the dark, winding roads that led to the exclusive enclave of hillside mansions. Willow sat in the passenger seat of Sloane's low-slung sports car, her fingers tracing the cool leather of the seat. The air between them was thick with the unspoken aftermath of what had happened in the office, a delicious humming tension that had only built throughout the rest of the day. They had eventually emerged from the office, Sloan flawlessly composed, Willow flushed and slightly disheveled, her lips still swollen from kisses. The looks from the employees had shifted from shock to adorning or struck comprehension. The message had been received loud and clear. Now the car slid through imposing wrought iron gates that opened soundlessly, proceeding up a long tree-lined driveway. The house that came into view wasn't just a house. It was a modern architectural masterpiece of glass, steel, and cantilevered concrete, perched on the edge of a cliff as if defying gravity. It was stunning, cold, and intimidating. Sloan led her inside. The interior was vast, echoing, and minimalist. Polished concrete floors, soaring ceilings, walls of glass offering breathtaking, dizzying views of the city lights twinkling far below. It was beautiful, but it felt more like a museum than a home. It was a testament to power and wealth, but it lacked warmth. It was so utterly Sloan that it made Willow's heart ache. "This is incredible," Willow breathed, her voice small in the immense space. "It's a place to sleep," Sloan said dismissively, her heels clicking on the floor as she walked to a panel on the wall. With a touch, she made the glass walls facing the backyard turn opaque, then transparent again. "The view is the only thing that justifies the property taxes." She turned to Willow, her gaze softening almost imperceptibly. "Would you like a drink? Or would you prefer to see the one part of this place I actually designed for myself?" The choice was an intimate one. A drink was a social convention. The other was an invitation into a private world. "Show me," Willow said, her voice barely a whisper. Sloan led her through another set of glass doors onto a sprawling patio. And there, nestled into the edge of the cliff, was the pool. It was an infinity pool, its black tiled edges seeming to merge seamlessly with the night sky. The water was still, a perfect dark mirror reflecting a tapestry of stars and the sliver of a crescent moon. Subtle underwater lights cast a soft, ethereal glow, and the only sound was the whisper of the wind through the cypress trees. It was the most romantic, secluded, and sensuous place Willow had ever seen. "Oh, Sloan," she sighed, all the air leaving her lungs. "It's magical." Sloan watched her, a satisfied, possessive gleam in her eye. "I thought you might like it." She walked to the edge, slipping off her heels. Without a hint of self-consciousness, she began to unbutton her silk blouse. "The water is heated. Are you coming in?" Willow's breath hitched. This was it, the precipice. The office had been a frenzied, passionate collision. This was something slower, more deliberate, a ceremony of surrender. Swallowing her nerves, Willow nodded. She turned her back, suddenly shy, and began to unzip her dress. She felt the fine material pull at her feet, the night air cool on her skin. She heard the soft, almost silent splash as Sloan entered the water. Taking a steadying breath, Willow turned around. Sloan was watching her from the water, her blonde hair dark and slicked back, her shoulders and the elegant slope of her breasts just breaking the surface. Her gray eyes were black in the dim light. For part 2, subscribe to our channel and ring the bell.